Hi everyone. So here we are back with Jack and Annie in Paris and chapter 5, and that was called Hello. Let's see what happens. Jack and Annie pressed through the crowd of people swarming around the hall of machines. Finally they reached the exit and slipped back out into the warm Paris night. The fair was just as crowded outside as inside. Musicians played guitars, singers sang, food sellers shouted, "Chocolate, milk, cheese, bread, wine." "We have to get to the Pasteur Institute fast," Annie shouted to Jack. Jack pulled out their guidebook and scanned the index, looking for the Pasteur Institute. "It's not in here," he said. He closed the guidebook. "It must not be part of the fair." "Maybe one of those horse and buggies can take us there," said Annie. She pointed to a row of carriages along the street. There was a line of people waiting to get in them. "Come on," said Jack. Annie and Jack made their way through the crowd and stood in the carriage line. "Thomas Alva Edison and Alexander Graham Bell," said Jack. "The sorcerers must think they're new magicians with secret powers." "And now he's invited them to some kind of party," said Annie, "so he can steal their secrets." "I bet he's inviting the other two," said Jack, "the magician of iron and the magician of the invisible." "I wonder if they're inventors too," said Annie. "Come on, it's our turn," said Jack. They'd reached the front of the carriage line. "We need to get to the Pasteur Institute," Jack called to the coachman. "Can you take us?" "But of course," said the man. "Thanks," said Annie. She and Jack climbed back into the open carriage. The coachman shook the reins and his white horse clopped down the cobblestone street. "Excuse me," Annie said, leaning forward, "but what exactly is the Pasteur Institute?" "It's a laboratory for finding the cures for diseases," said the coachman. "Oh," said Annie, "interesting." She turned back to Jack. "Why would the evil sorcerer look for magicians in a place like that?" "I don't know," said Jack. "Maybe the sorcerer got sick," said Annie. "I don't think so," said Jack. "But now we really need a plan. What if we run into him at the Institute? Remember, he has magic powers." "But we have magic powers too," said Annie. "Right," breathed Jack. He reached into his satchel and pulled out their book. 10 Magic Rhymes for Annie and Jack, from Teddy and Kathleen. By the light of the carriage lantern, Jack and Annie looked at the table of contents. "Remember, we can only use a rhyme once," Jack said to Annie. "Make a stone come alive." We've done that. "Make helpers appear out of nowhere." Done that. "Mend what cannot be mended." Done that. "But we haven't used spin into the air," said Annie, "or make something disappear, or find a treasure you must never lose, or pull a cloud from the sky, or turn into ducks." Go back," said Jack. "Make something disappear? What about that?" "Is a person a something?" asked Annie. "Why not?" said Jack. "This one rhyme could solve our whole problem. We'll just make the sorcerer disappear." "Yes," breathed Annie. "OK, here's the plan then," said Jack. "Let's memorise the rhyme now. Then as soon as we see the sorcerer, we can say it without having to look in the book." "Great idea," said Annie. Jack turned to the page in the rhyme book. "I'll memorise the line that Teddy wrote. You memorise the line in Kathleen's language," he said. "Got it," said Annie. She looked at the rhyme and started to say her line. "Thee one." "No, don't," yelped Jack, putting his hand over her mouth. "Don't say it out loud until we need it. You might accidentally make one of us or something really important disappear." "Sorry," said Annie. "We'll practice silently," said Jack, "and we'll each learn our own line, so neither of us can say the whole rhyme at the wrong time." "Good plan," said Annie. Annie studied her line silently, while Jack studied his. As Jack repeated his line in his head, the carriage rolled down the busy street. The street was filled with more carriages and many bicycles. Some of the bikes were built for 2 people. Couples dressed in fancy evening clothes pedalled together. Other Parisians ate by candlelight in outdoor cafes. Waiters in white aprons carried trays high in the air. Everyone seemed relaxed and cheerful. As the carriage turned into the quiet tree-lined street, Jack wished that he and Annie could just have fun in Paris like everyone else and not be worrying about the evil sorcerer. "Here we are," said the driver, interrupting Jack's thoughts. He brought the carriage to a stop. "The Pasteur Institute." "That is it?" said Jack. There's a picture. Wow, it's huge. The Pasteur Institute looked like a spooky mansion. Its huge front doors were closed. Its tall windows were dark. "Are you sure we've come to the right place?" Annie asked in a small voice. "But of course I am sure," said the coachman. "The institute appears to be closed. Would you like me to take you somewhere else?" "No thanks," said Jack. "We'll get out here." Annie gave the coachman a few coins. Then she and Jack climbed out of the carriage. "Thanks," said Annie. The coachman flicked his reins and the white horse trotted away down the street. Jack and Annie stared at the dark, silent building. "I guess we should go up and knock," said Annie. She and Jack climbed the stone steps to the gigantic front doors. "We've come to the right place," said Jack. A gas lamp lit a small metal sign that said, "Louis Pasteur Institute." Jack knocked on the door 3 times. No one answered. Annie turned the huge handle and pushed. The door was locked. "Maybe there's another door somewhere else," said Annie. Jack and Annie walked around the institute. They knocked at the back door and a side door, but no one answered. When they got back to the front door of the building, Jack heaved a sigh. "It's no use," he said. "We've come to a complete dead end." "We can't give up," said Annie. "I know," said Jack. They both stood looking at the street. All was quiet except for a few bikes rattling by. Suddenly, a whispery voice came from behind them. "Hello." Should we find out who the hello's coming from? Chapter 6 is Invisible Enemies. Jack and Annie whirred around. A dark figure was standing at the side door of the institute. "The sorcerer," thought Jack. He frantically tried to remember his line of the rhyme. "Can I help you?" the figure said. He stepped forward into the light of the gas lamp. He was an old man with stooped shoulders. His hair was white and he had a friendly smile. "Hi, who are you?" asked Annie. "I am the night watchman," the man said. "The institute is closed for the night. Have you been bitten by a dog? Have you come for the rabies treatment?" "No, we're fine," said Annie. "Is that what you do here?" asked Jack. "You treat people for rabies?" "Yes, not I, of course, but Dr. Pasteur. He treats other diseases as well," said the old man. "He is the world's foremost medical researcher." "Really?" said Jack. "What does he research?" "Microbes," said the night watchman. "Microbes?" said Annie. "Germs," explained Jack. "Yuck," said Annie. "Microbes are invisible to the eye," said the old man. "Some are useful and necessary, but others can cause great harm. Dr. Pasteur battles the deadly ones with research and vaccines and new medicines." Annie gasped. "He battles deadly enemies no one can see," she said. "He's the magician of the invisible." "Yes," said Jack. The old man smiled. "I suppose you could say that," he said. "Dr. Pasteur has certainly helped a lot of people." "We have to find him," said Annie. Do you know where he is?" "Unfortunately, you have just missed him," said the night watchman. "Earlier, a messenger left an invitation for him." "A strange man in a black cloak," said Annie. "You know him?" said the night watchman. "Not really," said Jack, "but we think we know who he is." "What did the invitation say?" "I do not know," said the old man. "But when Dr. Pasteur read it, he left immediately. He said he had to get to the Eiffel Tower by 10 p.m. "The Eiffel Tower?" said Annie. "By 10 p.m?" said Jack. "Do you know what time it is now?" The old man pulled out a pocket watch. "It's about 25 minutes until 10. "Yikes! We better get going," said Annie. "Thanks for your help," Jack said to the night watchman. "You're welcome," said the old man. Then he stepped back inside the institute and closed the door. "Hurry!" said Annie. She and Jack ran down the steps to the street. "Dr. Louis Pasteur," said Jack. "I've heard of him too. This is crazy." None of these guys are really magicians. They're all famous for doing great things in science and stuff. "I wonder who the fourth magician is," said Annie. "The magician of iron, who bends the metals of the earth and triumphs over the wind." Is he a magician or a scientist or what?" "I don't know," said Jack. "But we have to get to that tower, and fast. We have to find the magicians and learn their secrets before the sorcerer finds them." Jack and Annie looked up and down the lamp-lit street. A man was pushing a cart over the cobblestones. A couple on a two-seater bicycle rode by and disappeared. Then a horse and carriage clattered up the street. "Taxi!" yelled Jack. But the horse and carriage kept going. There was no sign of another one. The street was empty except for Jack and Annie. "Let's start walking," said Jack. "Look," said Annie. The couple on the two-seater bicycle rattled back down the road. They stopped near a yellow street lamp. "We heard you call for help. Do you need assistance?" the man asked in a gruff voice. Jack and Annie stepped closer to the bike. The riders were an odd-looking couple. The man was short. He wore a tall black hat and a bushy beard and a long moustache. The woman was short also. She wore a hat with a veil that hid most of her face. "We need to know the quickest way to the Eiffel Tower," said Annie. "We have to get there by 10. It's an emergency." "An emergency? Oh dear!" exclaimed the woman in a high squeaky voice. The man cleared his throat and spoke in his low gruff voice. "It would take quite a long time to walk to the Eiffel Tower from here," he said. "Perhaps you should take our bicycle." "Really?" said Jack. "Of course," said the man, "if it's truly an emergency." "It's an emergency, all right," said Annie. "But how can we get your bike back to you?" "Just leave it under the arches at the bottom of the tower," said the man. "We can pay you for letting us borrow it," said Annie. She pulled the coins out of her pocket and held them out to the couple. "You can have them all." "No, please, we're happy to help," said the man as the couple climbed off their bicycle. "This is really nice of you," said Annie. "Good luck," the woman squeaked, and then she and the man started walking away. "You were our good luck," shouted Annie. "Thanks." And there's the kind man and lady. There's Jack and Annie on the bicycle made for two, and they're called tandems. "Yeah, thanks a lot," shouted Jack. The man turned back. "You'd better hurry," he called over his shoulder. "If you want to be there by 10, you'll have to spin like a whirlwind." Then he and the woman rounded the corner and were gone. "I love this bike," said Annie. She climbed onto the front seat and Jack climbed onto the one in the back. "Ready?" "Go easy until we get the hang of it," said Jack. Jack and Annie started pedalling. At first, the large bike was very wobbly and they almost fell over. "We have to pedal at the same speed," said Jack. Jack and Annie balanced themselves on the bike and tried to pedal together. The bike bumped over the cobblestones a little more smoothly. "I think I've got the hang of it now," said Annie. Me too, said Jack. It isn't that different from riding a regular bike. Which way do we go? Said Annie. We have to find that busy street with the cafes, said Jack. They rode the bike to the corner and looked left and right. That way, said Annie. She pointed to the right, where there was a busy block with lots of gas-lit restaurants and people strolling about. OK, go, said Jack. Annie turned the front handlebars and she and Jack pedalled down the bumpy streets. Annie steered them carefully around couples walking arm in arm. People at outdoor cafes waved at them as they rode by. But the street grew more deserted as Jack and Annie kept riding. By the time they came to the end, there was no one around. They pushed back on the pedals and brought their bike to a shaky stop. Which way now? Said Annie. Jack looked to the right and the left. Both ways were dimly lit, with closed shops and dark houses. Jack didn't recognise anything. I don't know, he said. I wasn't paying attention during the carriage ride. Me either, said Annie. Jack could see the Eiffel Tower rising into the sky behind the other buildings. It didn't look that far away, but he had no idea how to get there. Let's try going left, he said. Jack and Annie turned left and rattled over the cobblestones until they came to an empty square at the end of the street. It's a dead end, said Jack. We have to go back, said Annie. Hurry! Jack and Annie turned the bike around and sped back up the street. They pedalled until they came to another dead end. Oh no, said Jack. Where's that busy street with all the cafes? We must have missed it somehow, said Annie. We're completely lost, and it's almost 10 o'clock. Oh, this is so annoying, said Jack. The tower is right there. He pointed to the Eiffel Tower looming over Paris. It's really not that far away. We just don't know how to get there. Wait a minute, said Annie. That guy said that to get there by 10, we'd have to spin like a whirlwind. I know, but we're lost, said Jack. We don't know which way to go. It doesn't matter, said Annie. We have to spin into the air. That's one of our magic rhymes. We have to spin our bike into the air. Oh, my word. So do you think they're going to fly to the Eiffel Tower? Let's look at the front page. I think they're going to fly to the Eiffel Tower. Oh, there's so much magic in this book. It is so good. So they've now found another magician. Well, not really a magician, is he? A scientist called Dr. Louis Pasteur. You might have heard of him. So they've now got 3 of them, but they're having to get to the Eiffel Tower by 10 o'clock. So tomorrow we'll find out if they actually make it. I think now they've remembered their rhyme, they will actually make it to the tower by 10 o'clock. And I wonder if they'll find the 4th magician as well. And then I hope they can make that evil sorcerer just disappear with their other rhyme. So exciting. Well, I really enjoyed that today and I hope you did too. And I'll see you tomorrow for the next 2 chapters. Enjoy the rest of your day and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.